Julius Caesar said, "Creating is the essence of life." It's advice Suntory have taken. Welcome to Kanpai Planet, I'm Mac, and today we're getting to the essence of Suntory Whisky, Volume 5. Since its introduction in 2018, the Essence of Suntory Whisky series has been hugely popular with Japanese whisky fans. Suntory's goal with this series is to give us a peek at the honshitsu, the essence of their whisky making and blending. The 4 volumes released prior to this one have done just that, giving us a fresh, unique take on some of Suntory's classic offerings. We've had single rye from Hakushu, single grains from Chita, even a rice whiskey from Suntory's little-known Osumi distillery. It's this eclectic approach which has meant each new volume is eagerly anticipated. The new volume features 2 whiskies from the Yamazaki distillery, Suntory's first, founded in 1923. The main focus of Volume 5 is the different types of barley used in each of these bottles, and the release leans heavily into the tentacles of Beam Suntory, who are now the 3rd largest distiller on earth. They went on sale on the 31st of August 2021 to bars and restaurants only. It's a limited release with no disclosure on the number of bottles. Both are 500 millilitres, not the standard 700 millilitres, and retail for 8,800 yen after tax, which is around $80 US. They come in these narrow, elegant, long neck bottles, which Suntory use for their Essence series. The labels are beautiful. Both feature a different take on the kanji, the Chinese character for mugi, which means barley, designed by Tansetsu Ogino, who wrote the calligraphy used on the Hibiki and Chita labels. Let's crack into them. The Essence of Suntory Whisky Yamazaki Distillery Golden Promise is Suntory's first product crafted from the Golden Promise barley cultivar. Golden Promise was a direct product of gamma ray mutation of the UK barley variety Maythorpe by Milne Masters Breeding Company, created in 1956. The barley was widely cultivated in Scotland from 1968 to the 1990s. Scotch distillers turned 400,000 metric tons of Golden Promise into whisky each year. Now, the barley's performance is far behind its contemporary peers, and it's only produced in small amounts. And yes, I did just flash up a family tree of major German spring barley cultivars, illustrating the pedigree of modern high malting quality varietals. Here in Japan, Golden Promise was used by the now legendary Karawizawa distillery, but internationally, Golden Promise is most famously associated with the Macallan, who used it exclusively during the 60s and 70s. Suntory own a share of the Macallan and have held a strong strategic partnership with the brand's owner, Edrington, since the 1990s. This was formalised in January 2020 when Suntory bought a 10% stake in Edrington. It's 53% ABV. It was distilled in 2009 and has been aged for 11 years in American oak casks. Let's check out the colour. That's a lovely bright gold. Suntory haven't explicitly disclosed anything about added colour or chill filtration. One would hope that there's been neither of those happening. On the nose. This is unmistakably a Yamazaki, but a little bit softer. I am getting some sweetness, but not as much as I would have thought, and not as much as the tasting notes led me to believe. There is some malt and some honey, but I'm getting more of that citrus and that spice that I get on a typical Yamazaki. Kanpai. That's more like it. Now we've got that mingling of the sweetness and the spice that I was looking for and hoping for. There's a lot going on here. I'm getting that sweetness in the form of honey and malt. I'm also getting some acidity in the form of citrus, lemon, and then some spice. All over the place actually. Some cinnamon and some black pepper. The overall mouthfeel is quite oaky and a little bit dry. The finish is medium long and that acidity really kicks up. I can feel the telltale watering on the side of the tongue. If you manage to get past that, then there is some underlying sweetness there. So what's the verdict? It's an interesting clash of those trademark strong Yamazaki flavours with a bit of mellowness and sweetness that comes from the use of the Golden Promise barley. That acidity though. Get to the essence of Kanpai Planet by binging on one of our playlists and subscribe for more, much more. We're just getting started. On to the Essence of Suntory Whisky Yamazaki Distillery Islay Peated Malt. This bottle was made with optic malt, dried with Islay sourced peat. Optic barley was developed during the 1990s and now accounts for between 50 and 60% of the barley market. It's the most widely planted barley in the UK. Optic barley produces high yields, boasts better resilience to disease, and has shorter, stronger straw. It's later to mature than other barley strains and is typically harvested in August. This malt is then dried by burning peat from the island of Islay in Scotland. The peated malt could well have been sourced from Beam Suntory owned Islay distilleries Bowmore and Lafroig. We haven't had many Yamazaki peated whiskies. We got a Yamazaki peated malt in Essence of Suntory Volume 1 in 2018. There was also a peated malt for the Yamazaki 2020 edition. We got a Yamazaki heavily peated in 2013, and some 1993 cask of Yamazaki single cask bottlings used heavily peated malt. That's all in the past, or in the present if you have very deep pockets. But back onto this. Distilled in 2009 and aged for 11 years in American oak casks, and it's 54% ABV. Let's check out the colour. Still gold, but a little bit more muted than the bright gold of the Golden Promise. On the nose, there's some fairly intense peat. I mean, it's not the peatiest whiskey I've ever had, but it's certainly heavily peated by Japanese standards. You have to do some digging, but behind that, there is some sweetness and fruit. I'm getting a pretty distinct strawberries and cream note. Kanpai. Ooh, that peat is pretty playful on the palate actually. It's a lot smoother and softer than the nose would have had you believe. It's much more salty on the palate than on the nose. Rather like the nose, you've got to go digging behind that peat and salt, but you can find some sweetness there, some toffee and some chocolate. Thankfully, the ramped up acidity of the Golden Promise isn't there. And this is really interesting. I keep wanting to go back for more. There's almost an umami there, which I haven't had in many peated whiskies. The finish is medium long. Yes, there's the peat and it's intense, but it does dissipate. So you're left with this lovely mouthfeel that then encourages you to take another sip. So the verdict on this one, it's a great peated whiskey. So, head to head, this is a tough one. See, I came into this expecting the Golden Promise to be a runaway winner. And it's a great dram, but that acidity really does stop you from fully enjoying that clash of Yamazaki and sweetness from the Golden Promise, which is the distiller's intent. This Islay peated malt is just a solid peated whiskey. So I'm gonna have to call it a draw. I can see Suntory's motivation with Volume 5. Volume 4 was really interesting, but featured some pretty niche whiskies and was not as well received as some of the prior volumes. Experience is the teacher of all things, and I feel that's why they've gone back to the Yamazaki distillery for an attempt at a blockbuster comeback. If you get a chance to try them in a bar, you definitely should. Being an on-trade release though, you're only going to get a bottle through contacts or in the secondary market. If you can get one for 8,800 yen, then absolutely go for it. But otherwise, caveat emptor. Suntory are clearly fans of Julius Caesar because they came, they saw, and they almost conquered. Until next time, Kanpai.